All right. First, let me give you a little background about myself. Um, my name is Randy De La Garza. I'm the cross connection specialist for the City of Surprise. I also do the pre-treatment program and the reuse program, manage three programs. My background is basically I started in wastewater, moved to nuclear power. Now I'm back to working for a municipality in water. So I've been with the City of Surprise almost 22 years. Been doing this for probably 20 years. So when I first started with the City of Surprise, we did not have a program at all. Basically, my introduction to cross connection was I walked in on my first day. I was handed a list. I was handed a bunch of letters, and I was told to get these tested. So um, kind of self-taught. Went to different classes, different programs. Became a certified tester at first, then became a certified specialist, and now I am a proctor. So I proctor exams. So if you want, if you've ever certified, I may have proctored you. All right, so let's go on to the first one. We're going to be talking mostly about running a program, starting a program, some of the pitfalls of the program, and some of the rewards. Here's the agenda. Why do you have to have a program? What is needed to have a program? Where do you get the authority for the program? What type of program you're going to decide to do, records, and then the last will be enforcement. So let's start. Why have a program? Basically, the biggest reason to have a program is protection of your customers and your potable water system. I mean, there's really nothing out there that can prevent backflow except backflow assemblies. And they have to be, they're a mechanical device, so they need to be monitored and tested annually, if not more, depending on the hazard. So that's one of the biggest reasons to have a program. Also, the United States did as you can see in there, the EPA requested the National Academy of Sciences to conduct a study. The study was released in two reports in 2005 and 2006. The next slide we'll go into is basically, and their discussion was potential hazards to a distribution system, problems in a distribution system. So I'm just going to show you what their report said. Here's a big description of what it says, but if you look, the board's first release on the public water distribution system, but what you can see, what really stood out to me is what's highlighted in the yellow. As you can read it, one of the issues that they found in their white paper was that cross connection, backflow, new and repaired water mains, backflow is an issue. In their judgment, this is high importance. All right. This is an independent study that was done. It's not a water purveyor. It's not a backflow company. It's an independent group of scientists. And their first thing that they put out there is cross connection is an issue. It's high importance. Water systems need to be protected. Again, this is just a continuance of it. They're actually pointing out that backflow events via cross connection is a potential hazard. Um, so this is one of the things that, if you're, I'm very passionate about backflow. As people who know me will tell you that I am passionate about it. I believe in it, and I believe that it is one of the things that works for protecting our water system. One of the things that we can do outside the science and the chemistry. It's a physical thing that we can do as people to protect our water system and our neighbors. And from pollutants or risks, health risks. So why is it needed? Why need to have a program? Well, the slides previously kind of told you why it was. So now that you kind of know why you need a program, how do you get the authority? Where's the authority come from? Does it come from the U.S., EPA, state, or local? Let's look at the EPA. Let's see what they have to say about cross connection. Oh, I'm sorry, this is in the wrong slide. This isn't the EPA. This is their report that we were talking about earlier. But let's look at it. The EPA does not regulate or mandate a cross connection program. If you look at their guidelines or their rules on cross connection, you're not going to find anything. What you're going to find basically is the water purveyor or the water provider or the owner of the water system, they have to protect the potable water system. That's all it says. There, you can't go back and find them saying, okay, every system needs to have a backflow program. You're not going to find that in any of those, in any EPA ruling. There's going to suggest it. They have a cross connection manual out there, but they're not going to tell people, entities, that they need a cross connection program. So you're not going to go back. You can't go back and say federal law says that I need to mandate a cross connection program. It's just going to tell you that you have to protect the water system. So how do we do that? Well, states have decided that they need to do something. So you're going to get the authority. There's Arizona state rule. Arizona state rule says basically water suppliers shall protect its water system, but they also have a rule 18.4.215, and that's the state of Arizona's cross connection program. State of California, their rule is in chapter 13.14, and they also, state of California mandates a cross connection program also. Nevada also has one too. The reason I've got these slides, just to let you know, story-wise, is I've given this at Tri-State multiple times, and basically because it's Tri-State, I want to let them know that California, Arizona, and Nevada have rules out there that we have to protect, mandates a cross-connection program. All right. Nevada's, their wording is basically responsible for preventing water from an unimproved source or any other substance from entering the public water. It kind of states the same thing that every backflow specialist, tester knows. They've been trained on it more than once. They've been lectured on this more than once. So, okay, so local. We have plumbers codes, we have building codes, we have municipality codes / ordinances. So in order to get a program started, all right, you need to do one or two things. If you're a city that owns a water system, you know that before you can start enforcing, before you can start a program, you need to get a ordinance written and adopted. Once you've got an ordinance written and adopted, that's just the beginning. All right. I found that if you don't have an ordinance, you don't have a leg to stand on. You don't have anything telling people they need to have a program done. You can refer them to the state, but I found that if you actually have a good ordinance, cross connection ordinance, that you can put your hat on, that you can lean on, this is what helps you with your program. You know, it's been backed by council members. Your department have backing. It can be enforced now. So plumbers codes, they're good. Building codes, they're pretty good, but they're interior. Most plumbing codes and building codes, they stay inside the building. They don't go out to the street. So you need to make sure that your municipal code has that element in it, that it goes to the street, to the water source itself, to the meter. Then once you start working on that, you need to know what type of protection, what type of system you want to run, what type of protection you want to run. You want to run a containment, isolation, or total. And we're going to define these in the next slide, what a containment, what a isolation, and what a total program look like. All right. Building code compliance takes place basically inside a building. All right. And that's known as the internal protection, isolation, or primary detection. Kind of like what Paul pointed out, I believe it was Paul who said that Backflow has kind of its own language when it comes to describing things, where in most cases, when you talk about a pollutant, you're talking about something that's harmful. But when it comes to backflow, when you talk about a pollutant, you're talking about something that doesn't look good but won't cause harm. A contaminant is totally different. So if you look at this slide, you'll notice that you're thinking, well, shouldn't protection at the meter be primary? Well, no. Protection at the meter, if you'll look at this slide again, is described three ways: system protection, containment, or secondary protection. You know, that is the type of protections that you can do, or some municipalities and some owners will go, come on, there we go, total protection, which basically means they go inside the building, so they have primary or isolation, and they do containment. So they ask for backflows tests or certifications, certifying that backflow is working as designed inside the building and at the water main. So if you're going to develop a program, you need to decide which you want to do. There's pros and cons to both of them. One of the biggest cons is if you're going inside a building, all right, remember this is private property, and there's a maintenance crew in there, and if there's a leak, they're going to go in there and the backflow, let's say, is spitting, they may remove it and you may never get notified. So, the only way you'll know is one day you'll send a letter saying that that backflow needs to be tested, and they'll send it back saying, oh, that backflow is no longer in service. We never had one. It was leaking, so we pulled it out and we just put a piece of pipe in there. So it's more time consuming, it's more costly because you have to do surveys almost every year. If you're doing a containment one, those also are on the system, right next to the system. They're kind of, one of the things about those is if you're out just driving around and somebody decided to pull one out because it was leaking, it's easier to notice because it's outside, it's next to the street, it's by the meter. Meter readers will notice that a backflow is missing. Well, nowadays, meter readers don't go out as often because they're all electronic and they all send signals back to the main office. But it's a little easier to maintain. You're not maintaining so many backflows anymore. You're just maintaining ones that are at the meter protecting your water system. So you have to decide how you want to do this. Again, deciding that once you kind of decide what you want to do, you want to write that into your municipal code. You want to make sure that that you build when new construction comes in, that they're aware of your requirements. You can do that many ways. I have, when I first started, I was not in the plan review or civil reviews. Now I've kind of invited myself back in the day, and now I'm a normal fixture there. Um, I get the civil drawings, and I make sure that the meter and the backflow are the same size. Uh, that it's the right protection for that type of building. Irrigation is another thing that we look at for protection. Um, and we also look at fire systems to make sure that there's a double check on a fire line, whether it's on a riser or at the edge of the property. Um, and I maintain those. I maintain the records for those. Uh, so again, you have to decide what type of system you want, what type of protection you want to do, what type of program you want to do. Honestly, if you're going to do interior or primary protection, you're going to do the total package. You're going to do the total package. And, you know, like I said, so you're going to do both containment and isolation. I feel like that is a decision between you and your peers and your city council. How do they want to protect their citizens? How far in depth do they want to go? Do they, now, just because you have a containment program doesn't mean you can't do a sanitation survey and go in and see if there's protection on certain things. Um, I do surveys or inspections all the time. I Because it's interior and my program is containment, I make an appointment with them and we go in, and the first thing we do is I sit down and I explain to them why I'm there. I'm not there to scold them or to fine them, or I'm there to educate. Uh, my program is very big on education. Um, Educate, educate, educate. And at the end of the tour, we sit down on a conference table and I go over my notes. Okay, I'll tell them, you have a tank of chemicals and you got a water bath, you got water going in it to dilute it, and you don't have an air gap. You have a submerged inlet. If something were to happen and your building were to lose pressure, that could siphon back into one of the drinking fountains. There was a issue not long ago with a janitorial closet where they put in a new dispenser, and the dispenser had a submerged inlet or had potable water going to it, and it was a firehouse basically, and the fire people came back from their fire, and they all started taking a shower at the same time. Excuse me. And then they started getting a rash. Well, come to find out, when there was inspection done, that they actually caused, because of the water use, they started a siphon effect on the chemicals that they were using in the janitor's closet for cleaning, and it caused them to have a rash. Not a severe rash, but reddening of the skin and blotches. So that, like I said, it can be totally innocent. It can be fined for years, but all you need to do is one time there's a pressure drop and a backflow occurs. If you know If you decide to do a isolation total package, you need to be aware that these chemical dispensers, they can be an issue. And in Maricopa County, the county is actually on their website. They've actually got instructions how to install and protect uh, water closets from these chemical dispensers. So take a look at that. And if you're doing an interior package, or even if you're doing uh, a new building with janitorial, or even a school, you may want to suggest that they look at this for protection. Uh, like I said, it can happen if you're, and it is due diligence on our part as a program manager to make sure that we're protecting our citizens as well as we can. Like I said, so you have to decide what type of program you want to run. Um, and like I said, there's pros and cons to both of them. Now let's talk about record keeping. As it was previously said earlier today, the state of Arizona requires that the record keeping is kept for at least 3 years. What type of records do you think you're going to need is something you have to decide. Um, the rule states basically that all assemblies need to have a maintenance record of backflows when they were installed and tested, repaired, or put into service. Now, it's kind of vague on what's considered in service or out of service. Um, if I take a backflow and I take it out of service so I can do a test and then I put the water back to it, okay, that's acceptable. But if, let's say, I have a leak inside the building and I can't isolate it, so I go out and I shut one of the shutoff valves on the assembly. Now, is that assembly taken out of service for that at that point of time? And before I can put it back into service, do I need to have it retested? That is something that you need to decide as a water purveyor or a program manager. You need to decide that. Another thing that you'll run across is construction sites. They have meters on hydrants and backflows. All right, so when it's first put in service there, you're gonna test it. All right, what if it's a big construction, big development, and they decide they need to have that water meter moved 2 blocks over? So they take it apart, move it 2 blocks over. Has it been taken out of service, or does that test that was done 2 weeks earlier work? That's something else you're going to have to decide. And other things are going to run into this. You're going to run into costs. You're going to run into politics, convenience. So again, you have to make sure that and each time it's tested and moved, that's another record that you have to keep. Okay, in case you get audited by the state or you get questioned on that. Let's go back to this slide here. I want to say a little bit something about test reports that are coming in. As a program manager or somebody that's in charge of the cross connection when a test report comes in on, excuse the Luke Air Force Base if you can hear him. When a test report comes in and you look at it and then you approve it and you put it in your file, remember one thing: that test report is a legal document. If something were to happen between, let's say you get the test report and it comes in and you approve it without looking at it, you just got so many to do, you just approve it, and then somebody gets sick. They can actually call for your records, and you can be, not only can the city be sued, but you approved it, so you're liable for that test report, and so is a tester. So that piece of paper, that test report that you haphazardly looked at because you've seen 100 of them, that is evidence, and they can use that piece of paper. Their defense attorney can use that piece of paper and say, hey, you approved this, but people got sick. On the other hand, too, if the test report was good and you approved it, remember these test reports are a snapshot. They're a one-time snapshot that at the moment that the backflow was tested, it is working. All right. A week later, somebody else can go by there and test that backflow, and it's not working properly as designed. It may have gotten something stuck in it. So again, you have to decide depending on the hazard. Let's say there's a backflow and it's protecting your water system against a chemical plant of some kind, whether it's just, all right. The state says it has to be tested annually. You can, if you decide that that hazard's high enough, as a water purveyor, as a cross connection specialist, you can go in and have that tested every 3 months if you deem it necessary. All right. There's nothing in the rule says that you can't have it tested more than you need it tested. All right. Another thing too that you should remember about keeping and maintaining records, as it was stated earlier, there's a 3-year, you have to hold on to records for 3 years. Let me emphasize the words 3 years. All right. I recommend you don't go over 3 years, because if it so happens that there is a legal suit and they ask for your records on that, if you have more than 3 years, if you have 10 years on that particular backflow, you have to disclose that and send it all 10 years worth of that, all 10 years worth of the repairs, the testing, the changes it made. I firmly believe that if there's a minimum of 3 years, once you get to those 3 years, cleanse your records, get rid of them. It not only helps with storage on your disk. Back when I started, it was files, paper files, but get rid of that, because you don't want to maintain anything more than you really have to. So my question is, I've had this question asked to me. Well, what if I decide to go 7 years, but it says only I have to do 3 years, and I just send them the 3 years? Well, if they find out that you got 7 years of reporting on that, and you just sent them the first 3 years, they're going to ask for that 7 years. And anything that is noted on those records, that becomes legal evidence. So maintain your records for what's required, but no longer than what's required. Okay, so as you can see, let's talk a little bit about enforcement. And as you can see in this slide, our goal is compliance, not enforcement. We want to educate, all right? But I like this saying, I can't remember where I got it, but without the threat of enforcement, you cannot reasonably expect compliance. Now, what do I mean by enforcement? I mean, if you're going to threaten and threaten and threaten and threaten and not do anything about it, they're not gonna worry about it. Okay, they are not gonna worry about it. So, according to the state, you have every right that if that backflow is not tested annually, and you don't get a report audit annually, you can actually go shut the water off of that business. And if you send threatening letters but you never do anything of it, they're not going to listen to you. I, in my program, have shut the water off to different entities. A couple of them that I know, I've done a gym, I've done an HOA, and I did a grocery chain. Let me tell you something. Once you do that, their neighbors start listening. Okay. Um, if you do it to a restaurant, that's a health code violation. Not on you, on them. All right. So they are responsible. Your responsibility ends when you send them notice that 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 particular backflow needs to be tested. Your responsibility ends at that point. They're responsible for getting it tested, hiring the testers, doing the tests, getting the reports to you. All right. If they don't do it within whatever time frame that you have set, then you legally have the right to go shut the water off. Is it going to be popular with your council members, your board members? No, it's not going to be. It's not going to be popular. But you're going to have to talk to this issue when you get the ordinance written, when you get your policies in place. You're going to have to talk to your superiors, and you're going to have to talk to your board members and your council members and tell them that this is part of the enforcement. And what I've found in the past, the best way to do it is, tell them, okay, I'm not just going to send out one letter. I'm going to send out another one saying they're getting close to their due date, and it will be a registered letter, or it will be an email. Some jurisdictions, one notice and you're done. Other jurisdictions, 3 notices. The City of Surprise uses 3. The third one is a letter that is hand walked to the business. And we sit down, and there's a form that we fill out. We discuss why the backflow needs to be tested. I give them an opportunity to become aware, because some of these bigger chain places, like these big grocery chains, or these big markets, or these big companies that are in your area, they don't get the report. Let's say I have Amazon. I do have an Amazon distributor in my jurisdiction. I sent them a notice, sent them a second notice. I went with the third notice, went to them, and I said, had a meeting with them, and they were very upfront with me, and they go, you know what? We don't get those notices. They're not sent to this particular location. And when I looked at my records, no, they're sent to a corporate a maintenance office in another city, another state, and they never saw them. So I took the extra step of going to the location that the backflow needed testing, made them aware of it, and then they could take responsibility for their own facility. And the meeting was very good. I came out of there, them knowing that they needed to get these tested, them also knowing that when they were due, because I gave them a record of their due date. My program system, is software package, gives the owner of the backflow the authority to get into my system and see when their backflows are due. It also gives them a record of how many times it's been tested, how many times it's been fixed. So I gave them that link, and now I never have an issue with them. They're always on time. Matter of fact, they're even ahead. So, like I said, the notices are important, enforcement is important, but also you can't, and the way I feel is, you do have to enforce, but you can't be an iron fist. You have to be flexible with your enforcement. They may not like Amazon. They may not have, they didn't know that it was due. But when I went to meet with them and we filled out the paperwork, and the paperwork in my form, it has a place where we put notes, the stuff that we discussed, and then we both sign it. So they're aware of it. I can tell you in my system, I'll get a call from them now. They're going, oh, I know we're pretty close to due. Can you send us the information? Or we just pulled the information off and we need to get it tested. So enforcement is good, but I believe that it has to be pliable. It can't be stringent to the point where you never made it. It's up to you to do it. Now, on the other hand, I've had companies call me and go, you're shutting off my water. I called my test company and because they're going to charge me double or triple, can I have extra time? No, no, it's not my fault you didn't take my first two notices seriously. And I don't blame the testing companies for charging them more for an emergency because honestly, they're busy too. They have schedules to maintain. And because they're having to reschedule somebody else, I don't blame the testing company for charging them more. All right. That's not my fault. All right, here's the California rule that actually regulates their enforcement. As you can see, they can terminate water servers also, plus penalties. Our administrative code that gives us the authority to do that, and it's Section E, Paragraph 1. You want to look that up. It's Chapter 18, Chapter 4, and it tells you that you have the authority to shut the water off if they don't comply with that. So, like I said, we do have the authority. It's when do you want to do it and how hard. I've had, matter of fact, I was telling you, threatened to shut the water off of, well, I was about to shut the water off on a gym, one of these like big gyms. And the way my system works is when they're out of compliant, it automatically sends a work order for shut off to our meter group. Well, I didn't hear from him. I didn't hear from him, so I just let the process take place. And about an hour, I'd say the next day, I got a call from the meter group. They were out there at the meter getting ready to shut the water off. And while they were there, the testing company showed up. They called me and asked what I should do. And I told them, basically, I said, it's up to you. You have a work order to shut the water off. You want to shut the water off, okay with me. But if they're there already, it's all right. I also don't have a problem with you leaving the water on, making sure that they get it tested, and then shows you the paperwork that whether it passed or not. If it doesn't pass, shut the water off. If it does pass, thank you very much. Go home and close the work order out. So, well, all I'm saying is make sure you carry out your enforcement. Don't threaten and threaten and threaten and do nothing about it. Okay? This is Nevada's code and where their requirements are for shut off water and cross connection. All right. I'm sorry I'm running a little early here, but if there's any questions about running the program, I'm more than happy to answer any questions. My contact was on the first slide, but I'm also, if you go to the City of Surprise website, you'll find me there too. So is there any questions? I'd be more than happy to answer
them. All right, thank you very much, Randy. Let's see here. If you have any questions, go ahead and post them in the question drop down regarding the presentation. Looks like we Have a bit of feedback from your presentation from Juan. It says here in Tucson, when customers have a past due irrigation backflow test, we will shut off their their potable water because shutting off the irrigation meter doesn't always work. First, we issue a 4-day warning with a fine, and after 4 days, we shut off water with another shut off line. Shutting off the potable water works the best. Thank you, Juan, for that feedback.
Yeah, I'll have to agree with him. He shut their drinking water off. Now, again, I've shut HOAs off, and I've gotten calls from the HOA manager saying, hey, my grass is going yellow out here in the summertime. Wintertime, not so much, but it does work. Shutting the water off, the potable drinking water off does work. And as he probably will attest, once you've done something like that, you don't usually have an issue with them the next year. Now, like I said, the authority comes from your ordinance or if you're a private entity, your rules, but it is also backed up by the state of Arizona. And if you're in California, it's backed up by California. Nevada, it's backed up by the state of Nevada. Don't hesitate to use that stick. It's a big stick, but sometimes it's the only stick you have. I do test in my program. I do test, as I think I mentioned, the fire risers. Now, you can't shut the water off to a fire riser if they don't do it, but you can turn them into fire, and at least in my jurisdiction, fire will violate them. They will code them on that backflow. So, like I said, make friends with other departments. What I did with fire was basically one of the fire codes is that every check valve has to be tested, pulled apart every 5 years to make sure that still works. I kind of went to the fire department and I said, hey, you know what? I have to get these backflows, these double checks tested annually. Why don't I take care of that for you? Because every time one fails, it has to be fixed. They pull it apart, they clean it, they repair it, and I can keep that 5 years tracking for you. My system will do that for you. And I got nothing but, yeah, do that for us. Great. So, like I said, if you're going to befriend other departments, befriend the solid waste collection, because those drivers are out there all the time and they can they'll see a backflow in an HOA that's pouring out water. They can contact you and you can make a courtesy call to the HOA and tell them, hey, you got a backflow out there that's dumping constantly. It's costing you money. Appreciate. They appreciate that. So not only is my program, I feel my program protects my water system, but it also helps the citizens out because I can spot a problem that they may never see. Okay? So, like I said, if there's any other questions or if you need to get a hold of me for anything, I'd be more than happy to give you some more insight. Or if you're starting a program and you want to see what one looks like, give me a call. I have no qualms about sharing my program with anybody. If you want to cut and paste, go ahead and cut and paste. I believe that there's no sense reinventing the wheel. Just add a spoke or two so it fits your program.
Perfect. Randy, we have 2 more questions here, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Okay, perfect. So from Paul, does a cross-connection program contain reviewing plans, inspections, and outreach?
It should. It should have all those. You should be in there reviewing civil plans, building plans, and then have an outreach. My outreach program runs to schools. I've done HOAs where I go in and I present to an HOA. I've done education with testing companies. A lot of testing companies, they have an administrator who has no idea what a backflow looks like. She just uploads the report. So the more I feel I can educate, the easier my job begins. But if you if you're running a program, you should be in what we have in the city. We have a concept review, and that's basically a developer or somebody wants to start a business. They come into the city and they meet with all the departments, and each department tells them what they expect or what they need from them. And I'm in that too, and I tell them, here's the thing. One of my biggest things is I tell people, I call it water critical. If they can't be without water, whether it's a medical office, dental office, hospital, whatever, uh, I recommend that they put in 2 parallel backflows, because annually one of them is going to be shut off for about 10 to 15 minutes. I tell them at the concept, I recommend that. I don't, there's not a requirement to do that. It's a recommendation. So if you can get out there and do that before you start, before they put all that in, a lot of headaches are going to be taken away. They're going to be willing to work with you. So I truly believe a good program has drawing reviews, outreach, as much outreach as you can, education as part of your outreach, and building review. I truly believe that that should be part of your program. And if you have to invite yourself, invite yourself. Sometimes some of these departments can be very protective of their little silo, and they don't want anybody to mess with it. But when I first started, I invited myself to many meetings. So now I'm just part of it. So, okay, you said there was 2 questions?
Yes, last one from John here. Who is responsible for backflow testing on commercial property, the owner or the tenant leading the property?
Well, here's how I work that. And I'm going to be real honest with you. I send the letter to the person who's paying the meter bill. Okay. So whoever's paying the water bill in my system is responsible for the backflow. Now, if the business that, let's say it's a tenant and he doesn't want to do that, it's not his responsibility. He feels it's the owner, the lease person he's leasing the property from. My answer to him is basically, well, if I shut your water off, whose business is it going to hurt? Who's going to be without water? You or the guy you're renting the property from? If there's a dispute and you can go after the test and get your money back, whatever it is, go after the leasee, but it's you who are getting hurt by me shutting the water off. And like I said, my solution to that was and is whoever pays the bill for the water is responsible for the backflow.
Awesome, thank
You know, that's how I work my system, and I think that's the best way to do it.
Thank you. We have
So
one more question here,
sure.
and it pertains back to Paul's presentation as well. They just wanted some clarification on something you said earlier. Neil thought I heard the previous presenter say that you shall retest the backflow preventers whenever a hydrant connection gets moved. Is there any exceptions to that in a cross connection program that you can?
Well, again, every time in my jurisdiction, it's the same way, but I've heard other jurisdictions say that if it's a quick little move, maybe 2 blocks, they don't see it necessary. So again, that is up to I feel it's up to the person who's managing that jurisdiction, their cross connection program. I'm not going to tell anybody how to run their program. There's an old cowboy saying that I'm stable blind, which means my program's the best. The way I run my program is the best. But the way the state reads it, states it is every time a backflow is taken out of service. So if you move a backflow from one hydrant to another hydrant, it's been taken out of service, so it needs to be retested before it's used again. All right, that's how I read it. Maybe other people don't read it that way, but in my case, and I think in Paul's case, that was the way he read it. Also, is that once a backflow is taken out of service, and when I mean water's shut off to it, and it's no longer being doing its job because there's no water going through it, then yes, it needs to be put back in service. Because you got to remember, backflows are mechanical. It's a piece of equipment that can have something stuck in one of the checks. It can have a spring break on it. It can get water hammered. So especially if it's taken out of service and then somebody goes out there and flips that valve out on and hammers the backflow, anything can be done to it. It is a mechanical piece, so my belief is if it's taken out of service, which in my mind is if I shut the water off to it for any length of time and you put it back into service and you turn the water back on, then it needs to be tested again. And but that's up to the jurisdiction, I believe.
Perfect. Paul, did you, if you're still on, if you had any follow-up or any other feedback for this question? If not, that's fine as well. All right. Well, it looks like we've wrapped up the questions for this afternoon.